When you get your fabric to sew your drawstring bag, it's going to look like this. It'll have a little clip at the top. Remove the clip. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to sew this down on both of our pieces of fabric. So take your seam guide. There's a piece of blue tape on your machine. Place the seam guide at the edge of that blue tape. You can see I have it right here at the edge, the front edge of the blue tape. So I drew a line and I have my seam guide on the bed of the machine. So I will put the fabric under. I want to line up the needle with the line I want to sew on. The seam guide, as I sew, I'll show you. If I keep this fabric up against the seam guide, it will help me to sew a straight line. So we're going to start with it at the top. Okay, we have the threads behind us. Okay, my needle is lined up with the line that I drew. I'm going to start sewing. I'm going to stop. I'm going to reverse, like I said, to lock the seam, lock the stitches, and then I'm going to continue to the bottom of the seam line. And as you can see, the fabric is staying up against the seam guide, and it's helping me to sew a straight line. I get down to the end, I sew, I hold down the toggle switch, my machine goes in reverse, I release it, and then I sew off the fabric. I make sure the bubble is at the top to lift my needle, and I cut the threads on the cutter. Then I do the same thing on the other piece of fabric. Take your two pieces of fabric, right sides together, you put them together, and you can use clips to hold them in place. Everyone has clips in their little packet. To hold the fabric straight, you put a clip at the very top where you have the two pieces of fabric together. Okay? And then also at the bottom. You have the clips at the top, and it's fine because you're not going to be sewing here. If you sew here, you would end up sewing close the channel that your drawstring has to go in. So you're not sewing there. So you're going to move that out of the way. You want to start sewing at this line that you sewed across to close the channel up. So you're going to be crossing that line, which will also make it stronger. So let's start sewing. And we're going to keep our fabric butted up against the seam guide so that we sew straight. Okay, so we start sewing. Go sew a few stitches, hold down the toggle to go in reverse a few stitches, release that toggle, and continue sewing. And you see I'm butting the fabric up against the seam guide, and that's going to help me keep my seam line straight. Now I want to turn and sew the bottom, making sure that my needle is in the fabric. Now I don't have to back up and forth because I'm turning the corner to sew the bottom. So we don't have to do any reverse stitching now. So when you're ready to turn your fabric to sew the bottom seam, you stop with your needle in the fabric, lift your pressure foot, turn your fabric, you put the pressure foot back down, and continue sewing. Now you're sewing the bottom seam. And you see if my fabric is, you see that my fabric is butted right up against the seam guide, right there. So that should help me keep my seam straight. As long as I'm staying in contact with the seam guide, my seam will be straight. When I get to the end of the bottom seam, seam that I'm sewing on the bottom of the bag. I lift the pressure foot again with my needle down, turn my fabric, put the pressure foot back down, and sew this last seam, which is my side seam. Before I get to, I don't want to sew this channel that I'm going to put my string in. I don't want to sew that closed, so I sew all the way up to that line where I'm starting the other channel, and then I hold down the reverse toggle. I'll go back a few stitches, and then I sew, stop, lift my pressure foot, make sure that the bubble is at the top, which is not. So you see that my needle, I'm turning it, it's now at the top. Pull it out, cut my thread off, and I'm pretty much done. So now that our bag is finished, we're going to thread. We finished sewing all the 3 sides together, the 2 sides and the bottom. And now we're going to talk about how to thread the drawstrings through the top of the bag. We need 2 strings to make it close properly. One string has the ends on this side. The other one has the ends of the string on the opposite side. We left our channel very large so that it could accommodate both of the straps. So we take a safety pin and we don't just put the safety pin on the end like this, because it will probably pull through as we're threading it. So we kind of snake it back and forth so that there's more than one place where the strap and the pin intersect. Then we take our bag and start, let's say you start on the left side. You push the safety pin through the channel and you just snake it through near the top of the bag. Just snake it through the channel. You can let it loose some, but make sure that you don't pull the end out, because that's very frustrating. You have to start all over again. When you get to the side seam, you started on one side seam. When you get to the other side seam, continue with the other part of the bag. You go through the other channel that will be like the back of the bag, and you keep feeding it, feeding it, feeding it, feeding it, feeding it, feeding it, feeding it. Like I said, be sure that you don't pull the end of the cord through. Keep threading it all the way till you come out that side, the other side. Okay, so now we've threaded one of our drawstrings through. So you take the pin off, you take these 2 ends and you tie them in a knot, just a little loop knot. You don't have to go crazy with knotting, just a little loop knot. And then you pull it as tight as you possibly can. Okay? And that's one side done. But you're not done yet, because you need 2 straps for this drawstring. So you snake the safety pin through part of the string, so it's like that. You want to start on the opposite side from where you have the current knot, because you're going to end up with this string going out that way. So I can feel that the first thread is the first string is at the top, so I'm threading, and I'm not crossing that if I can help it. And it's coming out, and you see it's coming out below the string that's already there. I'm carefully pulling it, turn the bag over, and continue threading it on the other side of the bag. Threading, holding onto the safety pin from the inside, and then pulling it out. Just so happened that my safety pin tried to open Okay. And now I have the other side done. So I'm going to tie this in a knot as well.
Are you talking to someone?
Now I have both sides done. So we've run our threads, our string through the drawstring bag and have them coming out opposite ends. And now we're pretty much finished. I think it would be a good idea to tuck in these. You see here where this is sort of extending. I think it's a good idea to tuck these in around the strings. Just gives it a neater look. You can just tuck that in. So you see how much neater that looks. So we'll do the same thing on this side. We'll tuck that in. Neat. Tuck these in. And now the bag looks much neater. And to close it, you just pull the strings in the opposite way. And look at that. Nice little drawstring bag. Now, I also have some rhinestones and some colored markers so that you can decorate the bag if you want to and if you have enough time. There's a piece of cardboard that should be on everyone should have a piece of cardboard. Stick the cardboard in before you start decorating the bag because you don't want the glue to seep through and actually connect your bag together. So you would put a piece of cardboard in, do whatever you have to do on the outside. If it's glue, it will, the cardboard will absorb it and you'll be fine. So that's it. I hope you learned a lot in this class and I hope you continue to use your sewing skills moving forward.